Been a busy month already. I don't know how many of you got to go to the Farm Fest yesterday. Tracy and I really enjoyed that. We went for a little while. We got to see the Bartos and the Kings, and I met Jim Ackerman. What a nice guy he seems to be, and he was so excited by the response. He wants to do this every year, starting this year. So when it comes around, when we get the information, I would encourage you. The last few weeks have been rather challenging, and to just go and just sit and be ministered to in singing, I felt such a peace and just relaxed and at ease, and it's carried over this morning. Just really enjoyed it. This month will continue to be busy. You've got an insert about the hayride and hot dog roast. If you have never come, you need to come this year. It's a wonderful time. It really is. And we have people from the community who come. Just a wonderful time of food and fellowship, and we encourage you to do that. Also, I'm looking forward to the ice cream social tonight at 5 o'clock at Lancaster UB. Please come out. They're really wanting to reach out and minister with other congregations, and I think that this can be a great partnership. Pastor Greg and I are great friends. I would like to see our churches do more together, and so we invite you to that. If you don't know where Lancaster UB Church is, the simplest way to get there is take 22 into Lancaster, and then at that traffic light, you've got Tim Hortons on the right and the fire station on the left. Turn right there. Follow that to the end. Turn right there. And the church is on your right-hand side. The First Church, or two together. So it's just 3 right turns. And then next Sunday, we're going back there at 1:30. Grayson Rife is going to be baptized. We invite you to come and share in that. And if you've never been baptized, well, this is a great opportunity. Just let me know. I promise I won't drop you. I won't hold you under. Okay? So we're looking forward to some really, really great times together. I'm going to just share one verse with you today. If I can find it, here we go. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Once again, our confession of faith begins by saying that this triune God created the heavens and earth and all that's in them, visible as well as invisible, and furthermore sustains, governs, protects, and supports the same. You know, the more I read over our confession of faith, the more I'm impressed with the wisdom that God gave to our first leaders in beginning with such a statement. Cultural anthropologists assume that a culture's cosmology will permeate a people's patterns of perception and thought. In other words, how we view our origins, our beginning, will determine how we see the world, will determine how we find our place in that world, and how we will ultimately live and behave in that world. Our postmodern world is consumed about what has caused our universe to be so vast and how we're supposed to respond to nature and use its resources. For many people, the prevailing view of origins is evolutionism. And it ultimately teaches that of all the origin and development of all things has been by chance, and that it has nothing to do with intelligent design. Atheism is now considered chic and cool and sophisticated. And atheists such as Richard Dawkins and Chris Hitchens and Sam Harris are given the status of celebrities and cultural icons. Building from the foundation of evolution, their writings are based upon philosophical materialism. In other words, for them, all that exists are time, matter, space, and energy, nothing else. And if it cannot be reduced to one of these 4 elements, then it's just myth and superstition. And this worldview that came into being in the 19th century has spawned the genocides of the last century and this one. It's big business today, selling aborted body parts, and the rise of so-called designer babies that are a result of eugenic engineering. It's given rise to all kinds of addictions in our society, and these problems are growing exponentially. And no matter how many programs we design or how much money we throw at them, we cannot get a handle on it. Why is that? Because people are trying to mask and medicate their pain, a pain that is produced by a culture of materialistic evolution that ultimately and constantly tells them your life has no meaning, it serves no purpose, you have no value. As UB people, we see it differently, and we have an answer for what ails us. God exists, Amen. And He has created the universe and everything in it. How do we know? How can we prove it? How can we know that it's just not some religious blind leap in the dark? Well, the Bible never tries to prove or explain the existence of God. It assumes His existence. And the Bible is not a scientific journal. It's a library about God and His love for a fallen humanity. But what I have found is that when scientists and theologians set aside their agendas and allow the Bible and science to speak for themselves, there is an amazing and remarkable compatibility. Now, God is a spirit, so you can't put Him under a microscope. You can't place Him in a test tube. You can't measure Him in a beaker. But that's okay. Because unless we are looking in the fields of formal logic or mathematics, we don't have to need conclusive proof about the existence of God. What we need is probability. And we do that every day. We do that when we get on an airplane. We trust in the high probability that we're going to have a safe flight and we're going to have a good landing. We do that when we come together in marriage. I don't think anyone in their right mind goes into a marriage thinking, well, in 5 years we're going to break up. We come together with the high probability that we are going to grow old together for the next 50, 60, 70 years. When we accept a job, we bank on high probability that we're going to be able to keep that job as long as we want or need it, and that we're not going to fall victim to a layoff or a buyout or a merger. So based upon high probability, there are 4 arguments that we can make for the existence of God and His creative work. The first of these is the cosmological argument, which is the reason for the world. Why do things exist? Nothingness requires no explanation. If nothing exists, there's nothing to explain. So why is there something instead of nothing? How did it come to be? Everything that we see exists. So why is it here? Science cannot answer that. It can tell us what is here, but it cannot tell us why. Except for God, who is self-existent, nothing in the universe exists on its own. Trees need carbon dioxide. Grass needs water. Animals need to eat. Cleveland needs a football team. The first law of thermodynamics itself shows us that something cannot come from nothing. There are many theories offered concerning the origin of the universe, and the predominant one in science is the Big Bang theory. This theory says that the universe at one time did not exist, and it suddenly appeared. Dr. Robert Ganji, in his book Origins and Destiny, says that the universe is not eternal. Background radiation in the universe tells us that the universe had a definite beginning and that beginning is measurable. If the evidence indicates that there was a big bang or a sudden beginning, who pulled that trigger? Robert Jastrow, director of the Goddard Institute for Space Studies at NASA, said this, and I quote, "Now we see how the astronomical evidence leads to a biblical view of the origins of the world. The details differ, but the essential elements in the astronomical and biblical accounts of Genesis are the same. The chain of events leading to a man commenced suddenly and sharply and at a definite moment of time in a flash of light and energy. And God said in Genesis 1:3, 'Let there be light.' And there was light." The second argument that we can rely upon is the teleological argument. In other words, why is there order in the midst of complexity? A designer had planned and constructed the universe and has left behind the evidence of his handiwork. Can a steel factory explode and in the process produce a car? Can a print shop blow up and produce in that explosion a dictionary? Of course not. Let's look at nature. The eggs of a potato bug hatch in 7 days. Those of a canary hatch in 14. Those of a hen hatch in 21. Those of a goose hatch in 28 days. Those of a mallard hatch in 35 days. Those of a parrot hatch in 42 days. Notice they are all divisible by 7. The waves of the sea roll into the shore at a rate of 26 waves a minute, regardless of what the weather is doing. Let's look at human beings. In our DNA, in a strand of DNA, there are 4 nucleotides. These 4 come together to produce 20 amino acids. Those 20 amino acids produce 100,000 proteins. Every cell in our body is packed with 3 feet of DNA. Now, out of 100,000 proteins, what are the odds that a single protein molecule can be formed by chance? How often can it occur? Write down the number 10 and put 243 zeros behind it, and that's how many years it would take for a single protein molecule to form by chance. Think of our ears. Inside our ears are what they call ceruminous glands that produce a waxy substance. That wax traps the dirt and debris that comes into our ears through the air. Now, on our bodies, the skin grows, new skin grows from the bottom up, except for our ears. They grow from side to side. And the new skin acts like a people mover in an airport, carrying the dirt and debris out so we can clean it. How do our ears know to grow sideways rather from the bottom up? Sir Stuart Duke Elder wrote on page 843 of the book entitled The Eye's Evolution. I don't know if he's a believer or not, but he states that evolution cannot explain, nor will it ever likely be able to explain, how we humans can see with retinas that are upside down and photocells that point away from the light. I am told that the Cray supercomputers our government uses would need 100 hours to simulate and process what our eyes take in a second. Charles Darwin himself in his book Origin of Species wrote this: "To suppose that the eye with so many parts all working together could have been formed by natural selection, it seems, I freely confess, absurd." Proverbs chapter 20 verse 12 says, "The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both." Amen. Let's look at the earth for a moment. Our planet is exactly the right distance from the sun for life to exist. It has the perfect tilt to its axis of 23.5 degrees to regulate heat and light. It's at the right distance from the sun to allow liquid water to flow. 99% of the universe is made up of hydrogen and hydrogen and helium. The lone exception is the planet on which we live. And the Earth's mass is exactly right to hold atmospheric gases, which Mercury cannot do, but not so great as to poison us like Jupiter would. 2 Samuel chapter 22, verse 16, and Jonah chapter 2, verse 6 speak of mountains and valleys on the ocean floor, thousands of years before modern science discovered them with submarines and other technology. Ecclesiastes, 3,500 years before this discovery in the 1860s, lays out the cycle of water from vapor to liquid to solids. Isaiah refers to the circle of the earth. Everything in the universe is made from 90 kinds of atoms that form millions of combinations. And the most common element is carbon. Lumps of coal, diamonds, leaves on trees, human skin. Carbon makes it possible to have the molecules for life. These poor souls that are so caught up in climate change and wanting to reduce our carbon footprint, they have been deceived. Because if you change the properties the slightest bit, no life whatsoever exists without carbon. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that the amount of usable energy in the universe is becoming less and less. The universe is not eternal. It had a measurable, definite beginning, and at some point will come to an end. 2,500 years before the birth of modern science, Psalm 102 says, the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. They will wear out like a garment. And we know that one day there will be a new heaven and a new earth. In Cosmos, Bios, Theos, page 203, molecular biologist Harry Rubin, and no Christian is he wrote this: life, even in bacteria, is too complex to have occurred by chance. Stephen Hawking, no Christian he, said if the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang Theory had even in 1 part in 100 million had been less, the universe would have recollapsed before it had reached its present size. There is the principle in science of irreducible complexity, which declares that the structures in nature and in the human being are so complex, it is statistically impossible that they could have come together by chance. Albert Einstein said, I cannot believe that God plays dice with the cosmos. There cannot be design without a designer. There cannot be order without choice. Psalm 19:1 says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky proclaims his handiwork. Our faith is not a blind leap in the dark. It has an intelligent, reasonable, rational, thoughtful basis. Evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. Romans 1:22 says, claiming to be wise, they became fools. The third argument is the moral argument, how and why we behave as we do. There is a worldwide common code. Nearly every civilized culture values truth over deceit, kindness over violence, loyalty over betrayal. We condemn racism and rape and murder and war and child abuse and theft and corruption and treason. We value liberty and social justice. We have within us, even as young as toddlers, we have within us an intuitive sense of what is right and wrong, what is fair and what is not. Why is that? It is because we live in a moral universe. It comes from God as He has spoken and revealed Himself to us. And it's imprinted within us because we are made in His image. And next week, Lord willing, we'll talk about what does that mean to be made in the image of God. Bertrand Russell, an atheist, existentialist, the philosophical father of the mess in which we find ourselves today, he wrote this: I don't want to live in a world with meaning. I don't want to be held accountable for my life. I don't wish to give up my sexual proclivities. Romans chapter 1, they knew God, they knew the truth about God, but they refused to acknowledge Him as God. And then finally, there is a religious argument, the argument from personal experience. For thousands of years, millions upon millions, perhaps even billions of people from every country, ethnicity, culture, income, education, and backgrounds have felt and experienced the power and presence and strength and deliverance and protection of God. Untold numbers of people have had experiences where it seemed that the laws of nature were suspended and it can only be described as miraculous. How do you explain someone like me? As wicked and vile and hateful as I was. I mean, by 8th grade, everyone knew I was going to prison. How do you explain my life? And the change that came about, a progressive change that continues ongoing up to this very moment. It ain't the power of positive thinking. It's God. It's God. Have you ever considered the fate of the apostles? Simon Peter, church tradition says he was crucified upside down in Rome. James the elder, the brother of Jesus, he was beheaded by Herod in 44 AD. John, who wrote Revelation and the Gospel, he was, church tradition I have read says that he was boiled in oil and somehow survived and banished to the Isle of Patmos, later being released and living to around the age of 90. Andrew, the brother of Peter, was crucified. Philip, he died as a martyr in Hierapolis. Bartholomew was flayed to death. I don't know what that means exactly, but it sounds horrible. Thomas suffered martyrdom in India. Matthew, he died a martyr in Ethiopia. James the younger, he was crucified in Egypt. Jude died a martyr in Iran. Simon says tradition says he was crucified. Matthias, who succeeded Judas, tradition says he preached and suffered martyrdom in Ethiopia. Who in their right mind? What sane person would allow themselves to suffer, be tortured, and executed for a lie, or even an uncertainty? No one. No one would. In reference to Francis Schaeffer's book, Genesis in Space and Time, here's what the first 2 chapters of Genesis teach us. First of all, God simply is. Second, God made everything that is not God. Third, there's only one of Him. Fourth, and I love this probably the most, God's a talking God. He speaks. He has personality. He communicates with you and me. He reveals Himself. Fifth, everything God makes is very good. Sixth, at the end of His creative work, He stops. And then seventh, creation declares His greatness and glory. We must remember, there was a video clip. I loved it. The DVD got lost. It was about 30 seconds long, and it was powerful. I showed it to the youth group to reorient their perspective. And it has this beautiful picture of the sun coming up and the day breaking dawn. And the young woman who's narrating says, "Oh, now I remember. You're not part of my world. I'm a part of yours." God is not the object that we evaluate and measure. Is he good enough? Is he living up to what he said he'd do? No. He is the creator who made us. And thus he is the one to whom we owe everything. What an awesome God. What an awesome God. No way this happened by chance. No way this happened by a blind impersonal force. He is who he says he is. I am so amazed. Sometimes when I'm driving to work and I'm praying, I just look up. Well, I keep my eyes on the road, but I kind of glance up. And I tell him, you could have been anything that you wanted to be. And yet you chose to be love and kind and holy and merciful and righteous and compassionate enough to love and save someone like me. Amen. I hope I never forget where I come from. What a great God. What a great God. Let's stand together.